For Comedy Hype News, I'm Symphony Thompson. Last night, the MTV Video Music Awards took place in Newark, New Jersey, and all the stars were out celebrating this past year in music. As everyone arrived and walked the red carpet, fans couldn't help but comment on their favorite artist looks that evening. One person who caused quite the conversation was rapper Sukihana. When Sukihana arrived on the red carpet, she dropped to the floor and began twerking for pictures. Her social media caption attached to the video said, "First time at VMAs. They knew who I was when they invited me." Now, as soon as the video hit the internet, it received a mixed response, with some disgusted at her choice to drop to the floor, considering it a bad representation for Black women. Tariq Nasheed was one user who would take that side and said, "She is 100% correct. The white executives knew exactly what image they were trying to portray by inviting her." Another user on the opposite end would say, "All women will not be modest and reserved. They are not obligated to be. For every Sukihana, there's an opposite version of her. So it's ridiculous that she's the default of representation of the Black woman's image." Now, one notable figure in particular who would speak out was Deelishis, who was most known from the reality show Flavor of Love. Deelishis would comment on the video, "Too many outdoor shoes been on the carpet, Buttercup." Of course, Sukihana didn't take too kindly to the comment and took the time to respond by writing, "Girl, you were sleeping with Flavor Flav. You ain't scared of nothing." The comment received a positive response when it was reshared on the Shade Room's Instagram page. Figures like Summer Walker, D-Ray Davis, and Mike Bless laughed at Sukihana's clap back. "Yo, flag on the play. Bringing up the Flav during the 50-year anniversary of hip-hop. She won though, but still. This is the best comeback in comment history. I'm literally in tears." Now, after Sukihana's response, Deelishis decided to apologize to Sukihana for her words, saying, "Not today, Satan. First off, let me start off by saying to Sukihana, I apologize if my comment upset or offended you. I should have said you too fine for that flow, which is much more precise way of describing what I thought when I saw the post, or even better, not comment at all. But unfortunately, I never thought my comment would be viewed as an insult. My people told me not to respond, but the new agenda is to put women at odds and have us hating each other for no good reason. I refuse to conform to that agenda. I believe if you offend someone publicly, you should be man or woman enough to apologize and correct your mistake publicly. My comment obviously felt like a judgment, and that wasn't cool. I'm a fan and an advocate for women. No harm was intended, Queen, and I wish you a blessed WCW, Buttercup." When it came to this issue, representation seems to be the big theme. Now, if you remember back in 2021, Monique received some backlash for suggesting women stop wearing bonnets and pajamas out in public, specifically at the airport. On this issue, Monique said, "When did we lose our pride in representing ourselves? When did we slip away of, let me make sure I'm presentable when I leave my home? I'm not saying you don't have pride, but the representation that you're showing someone will have to ask you to know if you have it. It's not to get a man. It is just your representation of you, my sweet babies." Some thought Monique's opinion was rooted in respectability politics, and the same can be said to Sukihana's twerking on the carpet. Respectability politics can be defined as a political strategy where a minority and or members of a marginalized group will abandon, change, or distance themselves from actions that are labeled stereotypical as a method of gaining respect or moving up within the societal social ladder. The thought that if Black people present ourselves professionally, they wear straight hair instead of locks, they don't wear bonnets, pajamas, and flip-flops out in public, if they don't twerk in public, it will lead to Black assimilation. Respectability politics is seen as a defense mechanism for minorities and a way to conform to mainstream societal values and not true progress. So it leads us to the question, can Sukihana's VMA incident be considered respectability politics, or was she in fact doing too much? Joining me, I have a very own You Be the Judge analyst, Joya, to talk more about this conversation. Joya, I want to dive straight in. I want to get your reaction after seeing Sukihana on the carpet. What was your reaction to it?
You know, Symphony, I am not the respectability police. I am of the mind that in 2023, we are not, Black women, Black people are not a monolith. You have people out there like Angela Rye, Yahara Shahidi, Joy Reid, that can represent so many different types of Black women. We seem to obsess and zoom in and focus on those women who we believe are not behaving correctly, right? So that's that idea of respectability. And my question that I would pose, in this segment of You Be the Judge, respectable to whom? Who are we trying to please? This whole idea, even of white supremacy, puts Black people at a position of we are inferior to another race. So for me, my reaction was Sukihana represents herself exactly how she speaks, how she presents herself on social media. She even said it herself in the caption. They knew what they were getting into when they invited me. So, what's the fuss about? Like, that's what I'm trying to understand. What is the fuss about when it comes to inviting someone like Sukihana? They could have invited Angela Rye if they wanted to. The powers that be know how to craft certain arguments, and they know how to set the scene to get people in an uproar. And we're in an uproar right now, right? We're talking about it because it's trending.
Absolutely, and a lot of people are commenting on this now. As I mentioned earlier, Deelishis was one of the people that commented, and it looks like her, or she said, I'm going to go ahead and make sure I make it clear. She did state that it was taken out of context. It's not, it was not delivered in the way that she meant. But I'd love to get your thoughts on Deelishis' comments. We saw her initial comment, but then we will also see her apologize. Both of those together. What was your reaction when you first saw her comment? Did you think it was an insult? And then her apology. What are your thoughts there?
Everyone can have their own personal opinions, but sometimes I'm like, the messenger, Deelishis. You were in the house, and I totally understand that she was talking about the carpet having multiple people's feet and shoes up on it. But Deelishis, you were just the wrong person, my love, in Monique's voice, to say anything related to Sukihana. Because you remember 10, 20 years ago, you were painted in that light in the house with Flavor Flav. So I just believe she has an opinion. She's entitled to her opinion. But I do believe that was the wrong messenger to try to check Suki on that issue.
Yeah, what do you think about her apology? Her saying they're trying to put women up against one another. What are your thoughts there? Especially when we talk about, because as I mentioned, you bring up Monique. Monique would call out Black women for wearing bonnets and pajamas out in public. What are your thoughts there when it comes to a woman calling out another woman in the limelight?
Right. So I believe that we as Black women, we have a responsibility to have these conversations in house. I don't necessarily want to combat Monique for what she felt that she needed to say to Black women. But at the same time, as I mentioned, we are in 2023. You look at somebody like Anna Nicole Smith, white women weren't particularly calling her out for how she was represented, maybe who she married, but not how she was represented, because they knew that they had enough images out there. So what I would say to the Black community, particularly the Black female community, we need more images for our children. Sukihana shouldn't be the example for your fifth grader. You should be responsible for putting more role models in front of her face other than Sukihana. But like I said, Sukihana is being exactly who the character, again, I want to make mention of that, who the character Sukihana is, because a couple of months ago, I think it was last year, when YK Osiris felt the need to kiss Sukihana in the mouth, we were in an uproar because she was representing herself as Sukihana the person. So I believe Sukihana the person and Sukihana the character are two different things. You guys can debate that out in the comments, but that is what I believe.
Yeah, let me ask you this last question, because of course we'll have some people in the comments that I think will, bring this up. So I think we should touch on it as well. Do you think, because we saw Sukihana, you had some people in support of Sukihana, but then you had some people on the opposite end as well. Do you think that if this was a male that maybe had his pants sagging or something of that sort, do you think that we would find that same response where he has people kind of saying like, hey man, do you, whatever you want to do? And also, some people disagreeing with it as well. What are your thoughts if it was a male in this situation?
I do. I believe as Black people, we always feel the need to police each other. And I really want that to stop. I want us to understand that there are multiple people with different personalities, different people that have different careers, that we don't always have to see ourselves through one person. If it was a male, yeah, I do believe that there would be a bit of a Black backlash, because when it comes to Black people, it's always a zoom in on us. It's always an eagle eye on us as Black people. So yeah, Sukihana being a woman, of course, women are supposed to behave nicely, and she didn't on the carpet. With men, it is a double standard right there with the patriarchy, period. But I do believe because Sukihana is a woman that it was heightened. But if a man did the exact same thing, I don't know. Yeah, it could get some backlash. But at the same time, he might be praised for being, a bad boy, because that's what we're supposed to like, right? Bad boys.
Right. Yeah, no, I wanna simp. Send a simp my way. No, but I absolutely agree with you there in the sense of like, I think so many times we hear people talk about how Black people aren't a monolith when it comes to other races or outside, people outside of our community that are talking about us or trying to put us in a box. But then when it comes to criticizing one another, it's like we quickly become a monolith. It's like, oh, if you're not exactly like me, then you're not XYZ. And as mentioned before, there are different types of Black women. There are different types of Black men in the world, and enough out there for if Sukihana is not your flavor or your taste, simply turn away and go to, another representation that is more up your alley or something to your liking. Right. But I do find it a bit hypocritical when I see that happen where we're, always talking about how we're not a monolith. But as soon as something is different, it's like, oh, but you're representing us wrong. And it's like, Sukihana is not a representation of all Black women.
Right. There is this, unofficial code that Black people must live by, must vote by, that we always say we're doing this for the culture. And we do have a rich culture as Black Americans, as foundational Black Americans. We do have a rich culture, but at the same time, we need to have the freedom and the liberation to allow people to express themselves in multiple ways. We are not living under this Jim Crow regime that we have to abide by certain rules within our culture.
Absolutely. Now, Sukihana would actually respond to this, Joya, so I want to read it. She responded on the Neighborhood Talk Instagram post, and here's what she had to say. She said, I just had a daughter.
A critic had to say this on the post.
Okay. And she responded? She responded, shut the heck up.
Shut it.
Okay. Okay, sorry. Wrong post, but...
Trent correcting this edit.
Trent correcting this.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Absolutely. Now, Joya, Sukihana would actually respond to a user who had something to say on the Neighborhood Talk Instagram page. So I want to read that to you and read her response as well. So here's what the user had to say. They said, I just had a daughter. I'm sorry I look at things much differently now, and I would hate to see her acting like this. As a grown man with values, businesses, and a strong knowledge of what's important, this type of behavior or woman doesn't even attract me. Bring back class, respect, and dignity. Now I'm about to get back to selling these vending machines while listening to A Long Walk by Jill Scott. Sukihana would then respond with, shut the HEW hockey sticks up. Joya, I want to give my thoughts, and then I would love to hear your thoughts on this gentleman that decided to respond, because my thing, if I'm not attracted to something, especially let's talk about social media, right? I have the ability to scroll by it. Right? Like if something doesn't attract me, if there's a gentleman that's doing something on social media, I simply scroll by it. Something else I find crazy is like people like this, and again, he is entitled to his own opinion. Absolutely. Whatever, works for him. But at the same time, he talks about bringing back class, respect, and dignity. But I can name a long list of Black women that do that. They just don't get the attention. When we look at her, I want to talk about artist to artist, right? Sukihana is an artist. Her is an artist as well. When we look at her, phenomenal artist. When she first came out, she had the shades. You didn't see anything. She's always wearing like the big clothing. You never saw, but who was talking about her like that? You know what I'm saying? Like in a sense of like, make her go viral. Why isn't her, bigger, or go focus on, what she has going? And there's so many others. Rhapsody. He talks about Jill Scott, and we talk about their era of Jill Scott, Lauryn Hill, and so on and so forth. Rhapsody is a rapper right now. Same thing, respectable, has the class that people talk about. Like, but why isn't your focus there? Why aren't you focusing on what Rhapsody is doing as opposed to taking the time to, critique Sukihana? I don't know. I just always find it like, if you don't like it.
Right. I totally get that. For me, to that comment, your daughter should be watching Grace's Corner. Like the Sukihana shouldn't even be a topic. She should be watching Gracie's Corner, Coco Melon, and other shows that speak into her development. You know, since the beginning of time, a Big Red and a Sukihana will always exist in our culture, right? So what do we do with that? If you think about like the 1930s to 1940s, artists like Big Mama Thornton, like some of her lyrics were very salacious at the time, and we found a way to exist. You know, she even inspired Elvis. So at the same time, we have to understand that we have to live amongst people who choose to live their lives the way they choose to live their lives, as long as they are not harming people. Then we have to understand that they will exist within our spaces. They will be Black, they will be brown, they will be white. So to that comment, again, I would say if you are looking for artists that are more modest, they exist. They're out there. Symphony, you just named a couple, and I can name hundreds more. So let's uplift them. Let's make them go viral instead of Sukihana.
Absolutely, I couldn't agree with you more. And again, you know, I think we're just in a world where we're so quick to point a finger, or place the blame elsewhere. But I think there's so much responsibility in ourselves. Like, hey, if I don't want my child watching something, am I monitoring what my child has access to? Hey, if I, you know, think that I don't like this or whatever, am I having that conversation at home so that when my child does go into this world, they understand, hey, there will be, like you said, a Suki and a Sexy Red that exists. How do I raise my child to respect? That's their lifestyle. You don't necessarily have to agree, but I'm big on, I don't have to agree, but I will always respect what you choose to do as long as it's not harming me or anyone else. So yeah, I don't know. I don't enjoy it.
Did I call her Big Red? I think I should call her Big Red.
I think, did you say, I thought you said Sexy Red. Oh yeah, I think you did. We knew, because it's Big Sexy Red, right? Not the little one, like that's what they say. Not the
Sorry,
little
Sexy Red.
But Joy, let me let you go. But before you go, you know, I like to know what you have coming up. What do you have coming up? And of course, how can people follow you?
Right. So right now I am in Dallas working on a coalition to bring in conservatives into the movement to end the American capital punishment system, which I believe is a cousin to lynching. So I'm definitely trying to work with lawmakers who don't necessarily think like myself. So it's been a very fruitful conversation. I've learned a lot. Folks can follow me at Justice Bay _ to follow the work that I do in policy every day. And as always, I love my Wednesdays with you guys. I've been missing, so I'm back.
I know, no, I appreciate you. Again, thank you for joining me in on this this topic. You know, definitely a crazy one, but hey, that's the news in the world that we live in. So thank you so much.
No, thank you.
All right, we'll see you next time.
See ya.
In a world that's so quick to judge and project, I think it's just important for us to remember that we have a responsibility of our own. So regardless of what you think of Sukihana or anybody that's close to that, I would like to take this time to shout out some women that I listen to when we're talking about artists. I think I mentioned a couple of them earlier, but I think as I close out, I would like to give them another shout out. So a big shout out to Rhapsody, Her, Lady London, and so many others, Chika. There's so many other options out there. So if there's something that you don't like, instead of using your time and energy to focus and criticize that person, how about you take that time, that energy, and project it somewhere that's more positive? But hey, those are just my thoughts. What do you guys think? Can Sukihana's VMA incident be considered respectability politics, or was she in fact doing too much? For Comedy Hype News, I'm Symphony Thompson.